With vintage drums all the rage, it's time to restore one of, if not the most recorded drum, the Ludwig Supraphonic. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all doing well. Nick Costa here, and in today's video, we are going to be restoring a late 70s Ludwig LM400. This drum in particular was salvaged from my local music store, which also came with a cool black UFO plastic case. Now, as you can see, this drum was neglected. It definitely was held up somewhere in a basement where it was dirty and dingy and not really taken care of. You can tell by all the grudge and grime that's caked all over it, as well as the pitting that is occurring to the shell. Now let's identify this drum for a second and find out the era of it. If we look at the badge, we can see that this is a blue and olive badge and the edges are actually pointed. That lets us know that this drum is from the 70s. Now looking at that serial number 1730642, that's letting us know that this drum is from the late 70s. Probably in that ballpark range of 77, 78, or 79. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can bring this drum back to life. Might not be able to bring it back to the condition it was in when it left the factory. We could probably get pretty darn close to making it sound that way. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so over here at the work desk, and it's now time to take the drum apart. So as always, I use my Remo Quick Key. I am a big fan of this because it is magnetic, so it does hold on to your tension rods, and the fact that it has this hex adapter at the top, you can attach it to a drill if you need to remove heads quickly. But we're gonna go ahead, starting out, just removing all of the hardware, so then we can get to cleaning everything. All right, so you can see here the original throw off looks like it's missing that backing plate that gets attached by two screws. That's what you actually fish the wire through between this plate here and that backing plate, and then when you tighten down with the screws, it holds it in place. Looks like that's missing, so the owner just ran the wires through and tied a bunch of knots. So I need to grab scissors, since this is actual wire here, and get that off, and then can go from there. The wires don't look like they're in that bad a shape. They're not really too stretched out. They're not warped or anything like that. So, cool. Let's take the rest of the drum apart. Okay, so now that the top and bottom heads are off, you can see inside this drum. It's pretty beat. Gross. Definitely still has a bunch of dirt and debris left on it from the 70s, I would say. That bottom head was so worn out that they just cranked down on it to the point that the collar of the head was actually almost in line with the hoop on the bottom. That is just a fair warning that you need to change your head. Obviously, you can see here there's some pitting, like right there where it ended up in my thumb. So gonna have to remove that. That's fun. But we're gonna do the best that we can. So first thing I gotta do is get that piece of metal out of my thumb, and then have to go around and remove all of these lugs. With the older drums with Ludwig, they did not use anything that had a head for a screwdriver, so you actually have to use a specific tool. They used to make one, but a normal 1/4 inch socket actually fits and takes them right off. So I'm gonna grab that and then can move forward. So now that the shell has been stripped, the next thing that I'm gonna do, because number one, because it is so gross, let's get that screw out of there. It makes no sense to just dive right into this. So I'm gonna just take a paper towel and try and wipe off as much of this crap as possible. And you can see, like, this thing is just gross. Gotta be careful too with this, because with a drum like this where it's super pitted, you just want to make sure that if more of the chrome is actually flaking off the drum, you don't want to do what I did earlier and end up with pieces of it in your thumb. So one of which you can wear rubber gloves, latex gloves, which will help a little bit, but not a whole lot. or just be very careful when you do that. So now I want to wipe down the inside of the drum, and I want to be careful because the Lud alloy sticker is still in place and in actually pretty good shape. You know, that sticker that lets you know about that reliable plating process that's corrosion resistant. If you are a vintage Ludwig fan, especially anything that has this Lud alloy finish from the 70s, you probably want that on the drum. So just wanted to wipe that down. That should be okay. The next thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get a paper towel, going to wet it down, going to put some Blue Dawn on it, and then I'm going to go around the surfaces to see if I can get some of this off just with Blue Dawn. Obviously, once I'm done, I then want to dry the shell off and then see where we are. Now that the drum is apart, let's take a look. And oh man, got that sticker just a little bit. It's all right, it'll re-stick. One thing that a lot of people always want to know is there actual Supraphonic brass rather than aluminum? Now, the first telltale sign is that if the chrome is pitting, it's aluminum. The other telltale sign, if you want confirmation, is you go to where the throw-off is located, and Ludwig used to stamp a B underneath it. That's how you would know. This does not have a B anywhere to be found, so it's safe to say between the pitting and that, it is definitely an aluminum shell. So let's go ahead and clean this up and take it to the next level. Number one, I want to make sure that I have gloves on. If you've seen other restoration videos on this channel, then you are aware of the fact that we are going to start using some stuff that is a bit corrosive and probably don't want it on your hands. So I myself, when it comes to metal shells, I am a big fan of Brasso. It's very easy. It's got a little bit of an abrasive in it, but nothing too crazy that's going to cause crazy scratches or defects, additional defects to the actual chrome. I'm going to take my rag that actually has a bunch of Brasso already on it, and I'm going to shake up the Brasso a bit, apply a little bit to the microfiber towel, and then coat the outside with it so we can start cleaning off these imperfections. So you can see the shell is looking a whole lot better. There's only so much that you can do with a pitted shell. Unfortunately, when it gets to this state, it's just a matter of the dirt got onto the shell, it wasn't cleaned. It's just going to continue to do that as time progresses. So that is why you really want to make sure that you are cleaning the shell like I did with a little bit of Dawn and of course with some Brasso. Now on the inside, we want to be very careful with it because, like I said before, want to make sure that we're protecting that Lud alloy sticker that we have, but also because the inside of this shell isn't too bad. It is a little beat, but you have to remember that it's not as exposed to the elements as the outside of the shell is because of the nature of a drum. Okay, so shell is complete. It's the best we're gonna get out of it, but it's clean, both outside and in. So we're gonna put that aside and now move on to the hardware. So just like all the other hardware, gotta kind of clean it off, right? Not kind of, but you definitely do have to clean it off. So this hardware is a little rough, most likely because, again, this drum wasn't really taken care of. So number one tool when it comes to polishing hardware is Never Dull by Eagle One. Never Dull is a chrome polish. Once again, it's a weighting pad. It has a little bit of an abrasive in it, but nothing too crazy. So while these lugs are off, want to check and make sure that everything is in place. And of course, take the Never Dull and you just wipe down the lug. Now, as you're using this polishing pad, this actually not only cleans the lug, it actually polishes at the same time. And then once you're done, you take a microfiber, which the one that I used is down here, and then you just wipe the lug down. Okay, now although I just wiped this lug down, it does have a little bit of junk still on it. So what I'm actually going to try and do is just put a little bit of Brasso and see if that can help maybe clean this up a little bit better.
If it's weightless and it's white like a ghost.
That looks a million times better. Obviously, again, there's a little bit of pitting, but that's pretty good for a lug that's from the 70s. So it looks like what I'm gonna have to do with this set of lugs is just apply a little bit of Brasso and then finish it up with the Eagle one. I know I just did it the opposite way, but that is just gonna help make sure that we get all of this junk off of these lugs, clean them up the best that they possibly can be cleaned up. All right, so lugs are done. The process that I ended up going with was taking the Never Dull, wiping them down the best that I could, and then doing round 2 with Brasso to get rid of anything that the Never Dull couldn't. If I say so myself, they look pretty decent for something from the 70s. So now moving forward, obviously there are more components. There are all of the tension rods, there are all of the screws for the lugs, things like that. Now as far as the rest of the hardware is concerned, the tension rods and the screws for the lugs, rather than trying to clean all of them one by one, I'm actually going to put everything in a container with some warm water and some Blue Dawn and let it sit overnight. That's going to help just kind of get rid of all of this grime and gunk off of everything. Dry it all off, and then I can do a finishing touch with Never Dull, and then it should all be good to go. But unfortunately, to do that process, it's going to take overnight. So I am going to leave you here for now, going to take care of all of that, and then we'll come back and pick up once all of that is clean. Okay, so day 2, we had all of the hardware soaked in water and Blue Dawn overnight just to help get rid of some of the dirt and grime on everything. And now we are at a point where it is time to kind of polish all of that stuff up. Alright, so the next piece is the knob for the internal muffle. It's not really in that bad a shape, so might be able to get away with just using the Eagle One Never Dull. There's a little bit of rust on the inside of it, most likely from the chrome pitting a little bit and coming off. So that's taking it off just a little bit, but not a whole lot. So to actually make this a little bit easier and a whole lot more efficient, we're going to apply a little bit of Brasso, again to a microfiber. All right. So now that is all done. The next step is actually to tackle these hoops. And these hoops are actually pretty bad. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to generously apply Brasso to them, and this should help polish them up a whole lot more, number one, but also get rid of any of that junk that's caked up on these things. So I'll start out with this, and then we'll go from there.
What's with your tongue?
So that looks a whole lot better, but there is a good amount of surface rust on these. So we're going to have to rely on the little trick of WD-40 and some aluminum foil. All right, so the question you may be having, why tin foil? Simple. It's actually used as an abrasive. So what you do is you apply the WD-40 directly to the tin foil, and then you can use it to remove surface rust. So now let's move on to the top hoop. So once again, these hoops are in pretty bad shape. This one isn't as bad as far as the surface rust is concerned. The inside of the bottom one was actually pretty bad. You could see a lot of the surface rust around the eyelids, but not on this one, so that's pretty good. But we want to get a new piece of tin foil, apply just a little bit of WD-40. That's probably the best we're gonna get it. So you can see on the inside of the hoop a little bit. Although the rust is removed, you can see that's just all chrome that's been flaked off due to dirt and eventually surface rust, which causes that pitting to happen. It's the nature of drums, especially older drums, that aren't well maintained or cared for, and there's only so much you can do. And that's it. So it is now finally time to put this drum back together. So we are now going to move all of the hardware and get the shell back. And then we can start reinstalling everything. So now, first thing we got to do is we have to put the hardware back on, starting out with the lugs. Making sure that you still have those cup washers because this is a metal drum and we want to make sure that they are secure in place. Now, taking a look at the lugs, want to find the ones that are in the best shape and put them towards the front, as most likely that's the side folks are going to see the most. All of these look like they have a little bit of road rash on the front. That's actually a good one. So I'm going to start out with this guy. Alright, so now it's time to install the throw-off and butt plate. I myself am going to be installing the new Ludwig P88 throw-off and new butt plate, only because of the fact that it's an upgraded version of what used to come on all of these drums. It is sturdy, well built, and it actually has notches built in, so you can use the fine tuner and have it lock in place without it coming loose as you play it. The best part about this is that they designed this P88 to have the same exact measurements as all of the old throw-offs, so you can easily upgrade them without any problems. Alright, so now that the throw-off is installed, wanted to install the upgraded butt plate, but when you look, the spacing is actually slightly off between the new and the old. So the old one is going to go back on. We're going to polish it up a little bit just to make sure it looks a little bit nicer. Take a look at my life. Need a little more focus on. It's kind of bored alone. Take a look at my life. Okay, so now that the drum is fully assembled with all of its hardware back on, it is time to put new heads and hoops back on. So, as you know, if you've watched other videos of me doing drum restorations, I am a huge fan of Remo, especially for the snare drum, the Ambassador snare side on the bottom, and then of course an Ambassador X coated for the top. So once again, just make sure that that Remo logo lines up with the Ludwig logo on the drum, like it does right there. Take your bottom hoop and make sure that those eyelids that you have, the slots you have on either side, make sure that they line up with both your throw off and your butt plate, and then start installing your tension rods. Now, as I go through this process of installing the tension rods, you may have seen my video on how to tune a snare drum. If you haven't, a link will pop up on the top right corner over here for you to watch, going through my whole procedure on how I tune snare drums, which ends up coming with a good sound. But first step, get these tension rods down.
Take a look at my life. Need a little more focus. Oh, it's kind of bored alone.
Now it's time to reinstall the snare wires. Just like now we can replace that old piece of wire that was knotted together and everything else. Always remember when you are applying snare wire, you don't want to cut the wire too short because then all of a sudden you can't get it through your throw off and butt plate. It's always better to err on the safe side, have a little bit more than is needed, and then if you need to cut it, you just cut it accordingly. So.
Take a look at my life. It's the kind of bored alone.
All right, so drum is finally put together and ready to go. New heads, new P88 throw off on the bottom. It's time to put this thing back on the kit and see what it sounds like. All right, so you can see from the demo portion of this video, going from the drum completely untouched, just putting it on the kit and playing it. It had a decent sound to it, but it definitely sounded like an old drum that was pretty beat up. Now, obviously, cleaning the drum isn't going to make it sound any better. It's just going to make it look a little bit better. But by putting on those new heads on the top and bottom, it really woke this drum up and goes to show you that although it's all pitted and beat up, aka looks like player's grade, it still has a phenomenal sound to it. If you ask me, I think this drum has a ton of life and body to it. And it just goes to show you why this drum is the most recorded snare drum of all time. I'd love to hear from you, however, and how you think this drum sounds, so make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below letting me know. Let me know if you liked it played with or without rim shots, or if you liked the way it sounded with or without the internal muffle engaged. Now, if you have an old metal snare drum that you are looking to restore yourself, I have put links to all of the products that I used in the description below. If you like the way that this drum sounded and you want it for yourself, I have it for sale on my website. Once again, I put the link in the description below. And while you're here, make sure that you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified anytime I upload new content to the channel. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on restoring a late 70s Ludwig LM400. And until next time, see you later.